Hi class, it's October 7th and I am doing a recap of what we learned in Coding Club today. As of right now, we have got some cards that we can move around the screen, and today what we're going to do is we're going to add graphics and we're going to make it so we can flip the cards over and be face up or face down. And that was pretty much our major accomplishments, and I was pretty proud that we got those done. And so we're going to get started. I do want to acknowledge that some prep work is I made a folder in our card battler directory. And in that folder, I put some images. These are not my images. They're just images off the internet. We're not going to stick with these images. But I've got one of a spade. I've got one of a heart. I've got one of a diamond. I've got one of a club. And I've got a card back. So when we flip the card, we see the card back. They can be PNG files. They can be JPEGs. It doesn't really matter. You're just going to have to reference them. And ultimately, we will probably be making our own PNG files for the graphics, but these are just placeholders. I also did source those, and I put the sources in my card.js file just so I could give credit while I'm doing the work of where I got them from. So the first thing we're going to do now is so pause, grab your images, put them in an IMG folder, and then go to your index.html folder. Now we have a graphics spot. We don't want letters in that graphics spot. We want an image. So I'm going to say IMG src equals, and we'll make this the heart .jpg. And now when I hit the refresh button, sorry, it's going to be IMG. So that's the directory that we're in and the file name. So we have a directory inside the IMG, we have heart.jpg. And so when I hit refresh, I'm going to get, here's one card, here's another card, here's another card. And then this card no longer has AAA, it's just got a huge heart. Now, we don't want the heart to be that big, so we are going to go into our CSS file. And we are going to put the CSS file over here. We're going to go into our CSS file and we're going to say, okay, let's change the image tag. And we're going to say width colon 100%. And this is a little sloppy. Height colon 100%. And something I actually didn't do in the in class today is I'm going to say for graphic.image. So it's graphic space IMG. So that will only affect the images that are inside the graphic. So if we have images elsewhere, it's not going to affect those. And height was supposed to be 100%. And now when I hit refresh, I no longer see this big heart because the heart is just existing in the heart card. And so I'm going to do the same thing for my spades, my diamonds, and my clubs. Now that the image is the correct size, all I have to do is go into the HTML. Oops, I keep opening it in the wrong window. I just go to my HTML and I can say, okay, let's copy this here, but instead of heart, we'll call this a spade. And instead of a spade, let's do a diamond. And instead of a diamond, let's do a club. And now we've got cards that actually have little faces on them or little graphics. So ultimately, you're going to need to make your own graphics, but right now this is a good filler. So that's our first step, and not too bad to figure out. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add the card back, because I'm going to just take care of all of the HTML. And so the card back is going to go underneath our number. So we're going to make another div tag. We're going to give it a class, and that class is going to equal back. And in there, we're going to also have an image, and that's just going to be whatever our back image is. And I'm going to put the back in all of my cards. Again, it's the last div tag in your card. And it's going to look a little funny. Oops. It's going to look a little funny. when I hit the refresh button, it's not back, it's img/back, img/back. It's 2 of them. 3, yeah, you need the directory. 4. And it's actually a little too big, so now it's big and it's showing up. We don't want it showing up and we don't want it big. So I'm going to come back to the CSS, and I'm realizing I don't want this in graphic. I'm going to say all of my card images are going to have that. That's going to correct the size, so it's the correct size for the card. But then these are called backs. So I'm going to go to the bottom of the page. I'm going to say .back. So I'm affecting the back, and I'm going to say display. I'm going to give it a display of none. None means it's invisible. So now when I hit refresh, it's there, but it's not visible. And that's good. So then when we flip it over, we're going to make it visible, and we're going to make the images that are there invisible. And so just a flip is just a visible to invisible. And so in the CSS so far, what we've done is we added the back tag there, or the back class with no display, and we did a card image. I also, I think I want to have this text to be centered. So in the text, I'm going to say text align center. It's just going to look a little nicer. And this stuff is very it doesn't matter too much because we're going for just an overall feel. We're going to worry about it really coming together later in the game. So now we need to mess with the JavaScript. So again, we've got our back, we've got everything going. The last part is just messing with the JavaScript, and I keep opening it in the wrong window. So now what I want to do is I want to say, okay, I want to keep track of if we click on something. I do have notes so I can go a little faster. If we click on something, we want to know if we're dragging it or if we're clicking on it. And if we click on it, we want to flip it from right side out, forward and backward. If we're dragging it, we don't want it to flip back and forth. So in our, this is attaching a bunch of stuff to each of our cards. We are going to add 2 new variables. One is going to be called dragged, and the other one is going to be called face up. So var dragged and var face up. And face up, they're both going to be Booleans, true or false, but face up we're going to say is true to start, because all of these cards are faced up to start. And we'll easily be able to programmatically say face up or face down to the whole set of cards. We're going to do that later. And then I forgot to delete that out, but we are going to, when we click on an object, we're going to say we are not dragging it yet. So dragged is false. And so right away you click on it, we're not dragging it. Then what we do, and again, I forgot to delete these out when I was going back to the old code, but in mouse move, as soon as they start to get a mouse move, we're going to say dragged equals true, because now we're dragging the card. So if you click without anything, you're going to say drag is false. And then when you release, we're going to check, is drag true or is it false? If it's true, that means we move the mouse around, don't flip the card over. If it's false, that means we clicked but never moved the card, and we want to then do a card flip. So down in mouse up, what we're going to do is we are going to say if not dragged, and then we're going to call a function. And we're going to write a new function. So we're going to say if not dragged, flip card. So we're going to just call a function called flip card, which we haven't written yet. But what that's going to do is that's going to say if the card is flipped up, it's going to flip it upside down and vice versa. So here I'm going to say function flip card. And in this function, we are just going to take the card, and if it's face up, we're going to flip it down, and if it's face down, we're going to flip it up. Now, we have this face up variable, so we're going to say if we're face up, If face up, then we're going to do something. Else, we're going to do something else. And all we need to do is we need to either show or hide certain features of the card. So if we're already face up, we're going to hide the graphic, we're going to hide the text, and we're going to show the back of the card. And during class, this was a little bit confusing for me because I hadn't done this for a little while. But I guess it doesn't really matter. I'm just talking a little bit right now. So what we need to do here is we have to say, actually I'm going to set up a couple of variables. I want to say we have a variable called the back, and that's going to equal our element. Now our element is what our current card is that we're on, and then inside that element we're going to say get elements by class name, and we're going to say we want to get the back class. And that's going to get a list of everything that has a class name of back. Now there will only be one item in the card with a class back, but that's going to be our back. Then we're going to say the graphic, and that we're going to flip, and then graphic, we're going to say graphic. And we're taking the same thing, same line of code, but instead of getting the back, we're going to get the graphic. And then we're going to also get the text. And now if we ultimately, if we add more things to the card, we're going to have to come back to this code and modify it a little bit. But it's pretty simple to modify. So now we have the three items that we either need to hide or show. Now in our CSS, we saw that if you want to hide something, you say the display is none. If you want to show something, that would be called display is block. So we're going to just be flipping those things. So if it's already face up, we're going to say back. Now back does give a list of items, so we have to say the first item, or index 0. We're going to say it's style dot display is block. And then we are going to do the same thing for graphic and for text. And so for graphic and text, we want to turn those off. So instead of block, we're going to say none. So the back, if we're already face up, we're going to say the back is, we're going to flip it to be face down, so show the back of the card and hide the front of the card. If we're not face up, we're going to do the exact opposite. So this will be none, and this will be block, and this will be block. Then after we do all that, we have to then say face up. We have to change our state of our face up. So we're going to say face up is equal to not face up. And the exclamation point just means not. Now, if I don't have any typos in here, this should work. So I've got my cards. I can move them around. If I click on a card, it's going to the back. So now I see the back of all the cards. Now I see the front of that card, front of that card. I can drag them around, and it works. So that was our mission today. That was our accomplishment. And I hope you enjoyed that. I did this as quick as I could because I know you can rewind, fast forward, and enjoy as you like. Thank you, and I will see you next week in Coding Club.